There were those that say we wouldn't break 25,000 by the end of the 8th year. And we're in the 11th month. We broke 25,000 just as we came in now. I have to be a little careful because as we walk out, maybe it goes down. You always have to be careful with that, Tom. But we did, in fact, break 25,000, very substantially break it, very easily. So I guess our new number is 30,000.
President Donald Trump earlier today celebrating yet another milestone for U.S. stocks. It's been pretty smooth sailing since the financial crisis in 2008, but there are a number of global events that could bring an end to the party. According to Eurasia Group, there hasn't been a major geopolitical crisis since 9/11, none created by a government since the Cuban Missile Crisis. But the rise of cyber warfare means wars can be fought on many fronts. North Korea is increasingly hostile. President Donald Trump is saber-rattling on Twitter, all while U.S. influence continues to decline and China seems poised to step in to fill the void. To delve into what could upset the geopolitical apple cart in 2018, we're joined by Eurasia Group President Ian Bremmer in New York City. So now, Ian, you do this list every year, looking ahead to what are the risks of the year. What stands out? What's the theme for 2018?
The theme is that we're having a geopolitical recession every bit as big as the economic recession we had back in 2008. The difference being that 10 years ago, January 2009, the response of everyone was, we need to fix it. So the Chinese were looking at stimulus, and so were the Europeans. The Americans were bailing out the banks and Detroit, where in 2018, 10 years later, we're not. We're actually, not worried. America's saying America first, not our problem. And the likelihood that geopolitical crises are going to break, environment where there isn't leadership and rogue states and rogue actors have a lot more room and flexibility for action, clearly is growing. So I feel really good about the economy. That 25,000 number is great. The world has outstripped the economic forecasts of the IMF. China feels stable. Europe's out of recession. That all feels really good. But no one can look at the headlines today and say that the political environment feels good. In fact, it feels much more toxic and divided. And that's an environment that creates conflict.
Now, we saw a tweet of yours the other day, and you were talking about 2018. You said, if I had to pick one year for a big unexpected crisis, the geopolitical equivalent of the 2008 financial crisis, it feels like 2018. So is it just all this number of factors that you're describing that make you feel like it could actually create some sort of a crisis?
Well, we can see what they are. I mean, I look at North Korea, and I don't think we're going to go to war with North Korea. But I have to recognize that the likelihood is a lot greater than it has been at any point in the last 20 years. Trump has already said he will not accept ICBMs hitting continental United States. The North Koreans have developed and tested those. I can come up with all sorts of ways that miscalculation could lead to confrontation and annihilate the Korean Peninsula. The demonstrations going on in Iran will cause a hardline backlash. It probably won't lead to much instability in Iran, but it means the Iranian deal could easily be broken by the Iranian government or by Trump himself. And then we're back to looking at nuclear restart and the Israelis maybe hitting Iran. I look at what would happen if there was a big terrorist attack, God forbid, in the United States or against American assets internationally. After 9/11, the whole country rallied together. Bush's approval rating was 92% a couple months after 9/11. In the United States, if that were to happen now, it would be massively divisive. Trump would use that to go after Muslims. He would use that to go after disenfranchised, to create a much more us versus them mentality, focusing on security in ways that would cause all sorts of problems. So, when you add all of those things up, I don't know which one of them is going to go bump in the night, but I don't feel comfortable that we're on a sustainable geopolitical path. It's really hard to imagine that we're not going to have at least some form of significant crisis in the relatively near future.
Now, another thing on your list is you talk about the decline of American influence in the world and the rise of China. What exact risks does that present to your thinking?
Well, we've had a decline of U.S. influence on the world stage for a long time now. That's not new to Trump. But we haven't had any other countries willing to stand up and say, OK, we'll play a leadership role until now. And Xi Jinping, China's getting bigger. His leadership is much more consolidated. And he sees an opportunity, an unprecedented opportunity, because of Trump's America First. And so we saw 2 months ago, after the 19th Party Congress, President Xi said, you're not going to see leadership from America. China's prepared to be a leader. We're not too small. We're not too weak. We're not too poor, which is what the Chinese have consistently said for the last 20 years. We are ready to play a global leadership role. And that's particularly true on economics and on technology. And there are a lot of countries around the world that may not like a China-led economy, but recognize that China's writing bigger checks. They're the ones still participating in the Paris Climate Accord. They're the ones developing big architecture like One Belt, One Road, the Asian Infrastructure Bank, while the Americans are walking away from those deals. And so that means for those of us like the Canadians, the Americans, that we're used to living in a global free market economy, we don't have one anymore. We have a hybrid economy where a lot of different capitals around the world are hedging and aligning themselves more with an authoritarian state capitalist emerging market than they are with the country that's supposed to be keeping the world safe for democracy. That's a really dramatic change for 2018.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us with your thoughts. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. See you guys.
Ian Bremmer is president of Eurasia Group. Coming up, the steps Tim Hortons heirs are taking to adjust to a new minimum wage hike in Ontario, and Premier Kathleen Wynne's scathing response.